We are studying Sri Aurobindo's elaboration on the Vedic concept of the creative word, Vak, and behind it, the science or the basis of the mantra. In the text we have so far seen, Sri Aurobindo has taken two different approaches and he joins both in the portion we are now at. The first was to take a scientifically recognized experience that a vibration of sound has the power to create and to destroy forms. And with this he puts an assumption. Let us suppose that behind all forms there has been a creative vibration of sound. Next, he takes up the whole place of human speech and sound in general, shows that the speech is a creative process drawing on the larger possibilities of sounds. And then he says the ancient Vedic theory of mantra only extends this usage, this creative action of speech, that the mantra is born out of secret depths of our being, brooded upon by a deeper consciousness than the mental, framed in the heart, held in the mind, concentrated on by the waking mental consciousness, and then thrown out. And this can create not only subjective states in the mental and emotional levels, but can actually result in effects in material form on the physical plane. And in fact, unknowingly, we are all the time acting upon each other and our environment through this action of our thoughts and emotions and even the speech, except that we are too engrossed in the external form of phenomena and remain ignorant of this whole field of science behind. And then he says the Vedic use of the mantra is only a conscious utilization of this secret power of the word. And now he merges the two streams, the scientific idea that sound vibration can create or destroy, and then this psychological power of the sound to influence. And when we join these two, he says, let us suppose that in matter there is a certain form, behind it is the vibration, and then we take a step behind. Behind the vibration on the material plane, there is a vibration of the energy, of the prana in the vital plane. Behind the vital, there is the mental vibration, and behind the mental, a supramental. And this is where we had paused last time. Looking at this whole series, we saw the rationale of how behind each of the more material, denser, grosser vibration, there has to be a subtle. Because before the physical substance can vibrate, there has to be a movement of energy, which energy is not a physical reality, but a reality of the vital. Within the vital domain, when there is a movement of energy, there is something which guides, channels, gives direction and purpose to the energy flow, and that is not of the energy domain and belongs to the mental domain. And in the mind, the thought which conceives and directs the energy itself is cut out from a larger, more comprehensive awareness which knows all the possibilities of how this thought should be worked out and holds all those possibilities in a single vision, conception, and that is the supramental power. So behind every physical form, there is this whole chain going all the way up to the supramental. But each of these, Sri Aurobindo uses the word corresponding vibration. Now we could question that. Why do you call that a vibration? At the physical level, it's obvious. The energy itself is vibrating. But behind the energy, the thought which holds, why do we call that a vibration? Because in fact, when we notice the nature of the thought form, we experience in it a certain movement, a certain resonance, all the way even to the supramental. The nature of the movement and resonance may not be merely spatial, as it is in the physical plane or even in the vital. But it is a resonance of a certain intention, of a certain idea. And so each of these levels can be described as a vibration, and we may even use the word sound to describe that vibration, but we use the sound now in a more general sense. Because we do not have another word to describe the vibrations of things which are outside the physical domain. And it is in this sense that we understand a very suggestive word, pranava. Pranava is the original creative vibration by which the whole universe is born. In common parlance, we say Om is the pranava, Om is the original creative vibration, and the physical sound Om is what we understand it to mean. But now when we look at this picture of gradations of vibrations going across the planes all the way to the highest creative consciousness, we can also begin to appreciate this same simple statement on deeper levels. When we speak of the Om and the physical sound of Om, it is only the physical vibration behind which is its corresponding energetic vibration, behind which the corresponding mental vibration, behind which the corresponding supramental vibration. Each of those would be, in a sense, an articulation of the Om, of which the physical chant of Om is the closest equivalent. Each of these levels of vibration could be described as the pranava, because each is the creative for the next level. But the highest pranava will be that which is supramental. And therefore, because it is also in a domain which stands above space-time, it is also described as a sound which is unstruck. It does not have an origin of something striking, producing it. That's the literal sense of this unstruck sound. But it also means it is a sound which does not have an obvious form, because it is the sound that forms other things. It is the sound of silence, or the sound as it leans back to rest in its origin in the silence. And therefore, it is on the borderline between form and formless. It is in the supramental that the form is drawn out of the formless, static, infinite, unchanging potential of the Brahman. It is there that out of that infinite possibilities, unchanging ever, something is drawn out and moves into domain of form, but still carries the immensity and the stillness and the permanence of the formless. What draws it out is the power of the supermind, the Vijnana of the Vedas. And Sri Aurobindo describes this as supramental, the originative vibration on the supramental at the very root of things. And he says the supramental vibration implies a supreme vision and discernment. These two words, vision and discernment, describe the process by which the first vibration of formation, is drawn out of that which is formless. If we conceive of Brahman, the all infinite potential, in its static poise before it moves to manifest, everything is held there. All that could be, all that can be, all that could be later in future, and all the things which will never be, all possibilities are held in that immensity of one single indivisible, timeless, spaceless consciousness. That consciousness now broods upon itself, dwells upon itself, turns to feel what is it capable of drawing out and manifesting from its infinite potential. And so the self, Brahman, turns to look at itself, and there is the seeing. That's why Sri Aurobindo uses this word, supreme vision. It is not seeing of the physical sight, where the seer, the seen, and the seeing process are three different things. It is one single consciousness that becomes aware of itself in a single movement. The closest we have to the human experience is when we become conscious of ourselves and say, what can I do? What can I be? And I see in myself a possibility to do this, to be this. And the act of seeing or becoming aware is a single act. The person seeing and the thing seen are same, and the act of seeing is same. And something like this in the oneness indivisible, and therefore he says supreme vision. And when it sees this immense possibility of all things simultaneously, undifferentiated, because it is one consciousness. And then out of that all, it draws out, it highlights one possibility. So when I look into myself, I see all this that I could do at this moment, and then one possibility is as if highlighted, intensified. Nothing has moved, nothing has changed. It's only my attention that has brought focus to that one possibility. And that's why this process of separating one possibility, Sri Aurobindo uses the word discernment. It's a very beautiful, carefully chosen word. Out of all the infinite possibility there, this one thing is highlighted, discerned, separated in attention only. But nothing has moved, nothing has changed. It is only attention which has separated this. And then from there, it moves into the vibration of creative form. So he says, all vibration of sound on that higher plane is then instinct with and expressive of this supreme discernment of a truth in things, and at the same time creative, instinct with a supreme power which casts into form the truth discerned. So these are two things. First, it sees that truth, and then it brings out with this supreme power, casting into form the truth that is discerned, and eventually descending from plane to plane, reproduces it in the physical form or object created in matter by etheric sound. It's a whole series of vibrational influences, concretizing, densitizing. In a sense also we see gathering material. Because in the supreme creative vision, all is seen. When one possibility is drawn out, let us say, we take the example of the possibility to be elephant, to be tree, to be flower, to be galaxy, or to be universe. All these are there, and it draws out one. I choose to be expressed as tree. But in the tree is not just this one static poise of the tree as it is at this moment that we see, but the whole journey of the tree from the seed out to its growth, and to its exhaustion and collapse, withdrawal and a return. The whole journey is tree. It's not just this one object. It's the human mind which sees things only in a limited piece at this moment in this form. The treeness of tree which Brahman sees is the entire journey, and not only this one particular journey, but all possible variations to this journey, in which all possible relationships with objects around it, the mountain on which the tree grows, the rains that come upon the tree, on the roots, on the leaves, the birds which put their nest, all the external impacts and responses to each of them are held in that single creative supramental vision. And that is the treeness that the supermind casts out. And what it sees is infused with its creative power, and that power vibrating from the supramental creates its resonance in the mental. And what is the character of the mental vibration? Thought and perception. So in the mental already it has got to a fixed, limited form, where in the supermind it is infinite, because the treeness of the tree is held in relation to all things in the universe, and every possible outcome of relationship is known. So it is infinite still. But in the mind now it has become cast into form of tree, and the journey of the tree, and the infinite connection with the whole universe is as if set aside, put behind. Now you see, in the physical tree, it still has those infinite relationships with all things in the universe, but the mind only sees this form and cuts it out. So in the domain of the mind already that limitation has happened. There is a finite appearance casting into thought, but the thought itself is malleable. Depending on circumstances, it can respond differently, because behind it is the infinite knowledge of the supermind. This thought now begins to push and influence the domain of the energy, the life force, and begins to nudge the life force to flow around certain rhythms and patterns which will allow it to articulate and manifest itself. And that movement of the life energy gathers and moves the physical substance of matter, in this case in the seed, to activate the process of movement of molecules and cells, to bring out the purpose held in the thought, behind which is the full supramental possibilities. So there's this whole chain all the way down to the most material, which is also moving in vibration, nudging, pushing to articulate and to manifest. But if you see it another way, at each step, it's as if the consciousness has gathered thought form and substance, life force and substance, and then material substance, and is now using it to develop tree. And at the most material level, you see how it draws substance from outside the seed, uses and forms it to build this whole tree which was not there before. The seed itself and the material of the seed is exhausted. All the material that the tree is made of now was drawn from the environment around. The seed was only an occasion to kickstart a process for life force to take the existing physical material and form the tree. The life force itself was only an occasion for the thought, form and idea to gather life energy and channel it to form the tree. The original life force which it started with is gone and expended in the universal life energy. It's new life energy that is flowing in. And the mind thought form itself is undergoing changes as the tree grows to draw out the next, the next, the next. Behind it all is the supramental vision, supreme vision, as Sri Aurobindo says, supreme vision and discernment, which holds all this possibility of all this journey and continues to guide it secretly. So at this very moment, if we look at this whole thing, sequence, not only for the tree, not only for the bird who makes the nest in the tree, not only the mountain, not only the planet, not only the galaxy, but the whole universe is in fact held in this creative column of vibration. The pranava on the material level of the Om, which one human voice chants, is only a small part of the universal physical vibration of the Brahman as matter, Virat, which is only a densification of expression of Brahman in his mode as Hiranyagarbha, one who is in the inner planes where he wields the power of mind and life force, which is only an external form of the great conception held in the vision of the supramental consciousness and the status of Brahman in that station, which is finally drawn out from Brahman in his transcendent, unknowable, formless beyond. And you see the whole column of Brahman manifesting all the way down to the most material, and it is always vibration, vibration, lapsing into the silence, which is also seen in another way, infinite potential, infinite vibration at the same time, and that is what we call silence. All form of vibration is a selection out of that infinite possibility of vibration drawn forward, and that we call sound. We see this very interestingly in two ways, even in the domain of physical science. If you take the smell, the sense of smell, and give to it all possible smells, just gather 1,000 different kinds of incense, put a drop of each, what would be this combined smell of it all? And interestingly, what happens, the nose detects it as no smell. All possible smells put together is equivalent to no smell. If you subdue them and let one highlight, or you intensify one against the other, that becomes now the smell, and the combination of the rest is your 0 point. The same thing happens with light or with sound. When we put all possible frequencies of sound, they call it white noise, but that is also a limited band. When you actually put all things, then that becomes the 0 point against which anything standing out above becomes the sound. In the domain of materiality, of substance, of particles, similarly we find an underlying massive energy which is almost infinite. That is the 0 point of physics, against which a particle emerges as a distinctive form of energy and plays like a wave and then lapses back into the 0 point. But the 0 point itself is infinite potential, infinite energy. So when we look at it in these terms, that unknowable beyond form is all possibility of form and all possibility of formlessness held in that unknowable, but it knows itself and draws out from itself infinite vibrations and forms all the way down to the material, but there is a continuity throughout and a gathering, densification of substance and vibration all the way to matter. Now once we see the full column, there are many interesting possibilities. First, that at any one of these intermediate levels, something could initiate a vibration downwards and bring to matter, fruition. A strong emotion, a strong thought can initiate the process. But the possibility of this strong thought is already held in the supramental domain. Equally, the reverse direction is possible. From any one of these levels, the vibration which is experienced can be used to enter in relation to the higher vibration of which it is the expression. And so, on a physical plane, we chant Om physically, but by putting a certain intention of concentration and attention, we attune ourselves to the higher vibrations of the pranava, all the way to the origin, which we do not hear, which we do not feel directly, but which we tap into through this sound. Or we take another vibration which corresponds to a certain thought or a certain feeling and evoke those feelings or thoughts by use or combinations of these vibrations. And we can see here how the whole principle of the use of mantra can become an entire science with which one could do practically anything. By mastering the power of vibration on any level, you can create things on a lower level or influence things, or you can tap into a still higher creative power on a higher level and from there affect things. This is then the principle of what is known as magic or occultism, where we observe the relationships between powers, vibrations on a higher plane and their forms on the lower plane. We move or modify the forms on the lower plane to influence the original vibrations on the higher planes to produce other more complex and more interesting effects. So for example, if you consider that every sound has a natural geometric vibration. We discussed this a few weeks ago, that when we play a sound on a vibrating sheet and place a fine powder on it, the powder takes on different shapes. So there are geometric shapes associated with different sounds. You could take just that geometric shape. Now there's no physical vibration at all, but the geometric shape of a square, a circle, a triangle, or a combination of them, it already, just the fact of drawing them, is putting it in relation to the vibration on a subtle level, energetic level, of which this would be the corresponding forms. And if you infuse into it a mental intention, that vibration can be stimulated and intensified. So if you simply have a triangle, it would produce an effect in any case on the vital or mental domain, because it would be a resonating form. Let me put it another way. If you take a bell, you ring the bell and there's this pure sound spreading out. If there is another bell which is tuned exactly to the same frequency, you strike the first bell, after a while you'll hear the second vibrating. They call it resonance. But this is happening all the time between levels also. So you create a vibration in the vital plane, energetic, and you have a physical shape. You draw the physical shape and it catches by resonance that vibration on the vital plane, attracts it. Or rather, to say it in a different way, around that physical location, that vibration will be felt more strongly in the vital plane. Now if you move this and modify this, the vibration on the vital plane will be modified. If now the person drawing this triangle puts into it a strong intention of the meaning, he is provoking the resonance on the mental or vital plane corresponding to this triangle because of his thought and feeling. But that is now held bound to the physical object because of the resonance. And now this diagram, this shape, carries with it a certain aura of mental vibration and vital energy. The object placed somewhere will continue to radiate that vibration. After a while, the vibration may weaken, but it is still there. Somebody could come and reinfuse intensely that vibration, it will again spread loud. It all depends on the diagram and the way it has been put together. And you can now see why the yantra was considered so important. Even to the extent that the yantra was treated as a conscious being or person when it had been so infused with spiritual energy. You probably know of the Sri Yantra, which is considered the highest among them, that which embodies and represents the Divine Mother. But also the Sri Yantra is a physical representation of the structure of the cosmos, the triangles, squares, circles, etc., representing the cosmos. The cosmos, of course, can be represented in many ways, but this is one of the more obvious and more complete representations. Everything within it has a symbol, has a meaning, but also has a vibrational quality which you can highlight, intensify by writing those sound letters corresponding to those vibrations, the bija mantras. And you are intensifying those particular aspects of the whole. This, drawn in this way, already creates a shift in the atmosphere. We can treat it as a radiator of a protection, a protective atmosphere. And so it is put as an amulet, put in the locket, or in an amulet which is bound to the hand, and so on. Or if this same yantra is worshipped, the Divine Mother's presence invoked into it in the process of the ritual, and especially if this is done by somebody of a high spiritual attainment, then it has been exceptionally energized and continues to radiate this thereafter. And this is the reason why you will find in certain sacred spaces such a yantra established by so and so saint. When you go towards in the north, towards the origin of the Ganga, in Joshimath, you find the cave where Shankaracharya did his meditation, and there the Sri Yantra, which he originally worshipped and placed in a special way. The fact that he infused it with a certain energy gives it a special power, although in principle anyone could draw that and still have some benefit of it, and so on. Because you see, all of these things have a very clear rationale once we understand the way these vibrations move across the different levels of consciousness. So we read this passage once again, and you see the full sense of it from the portion that we read last time. Let us suppose a conscious use of the vibrations of sound which only produce corresponding forms or changes of form on a material level. But matter is only, in the ancient view, the lowest of the planes of existence. Let us realize then that a vibration of sound on the material plane presupposes a corresponding vibration on the vital, without which it could not have come into play. That again presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the mental. The mental presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the supramental at the very root of things. But a mental vibration implies thought and perception, and a supramental vibration implies a supreme vision and discernment. All vibration of sound on that higher plane is then instinct with and expressive of this supreme discernment of a truth in things, and is at the same time creative, instinct with a supreme power which casts into forms the truth discerned, and eventually, descending from plane to plane, reproduces it in the physical form or object created in matter by etheric sound. So at the most material level, it is vibration of the etheric substratum that forms the physical material, but behind it all, this column of vibration all the way to the creative, supreme creative vision and discernment. Sri Aurobindo then says, thus we see that the theory of creation by the word, which is the absolute expression of the truth, and the theory of the material creation by sound vibration in the ether correspond and are two logical poles of the same idea. They both belong to the ancient Vedic system. They both belong to the same ancient Vedic system. So on the most material level, what science also sees in a different way, physical matter is formed of vibration in the etheric, but the same principle all the way to the highest. And these are the two extremes. But seen in a different way, the same vocabulary can be used all the way up. So we speak, for example, of the physical ether, of which physical matter is a form, condensation. But there is behind it the Chit Akasha, the ether of consciousness, in which the vibrations create mental forms. And behind that, the essence, which is transcending these things, the causal plane in the supramental, which takes the formless and draws out of it form. So, three broad levels in the Vedic scheme of things, three strata, substrata of the creative process. On each, it is exactly the same thing which is replicated as if on a denser level lower down of something which happens on the higher. And this is why you will find when people say things like, oh, Om is the creative sound which creates the whole universe. Yes, you can accept it on a nearly material level, but it represents a truth of that level. But because it corresponds so closely to the material process also, we can stop here and say this is it, and not see that which is behind. So Sri Aurobindo's description now moves forward. This then is the supreme word, speech of our speech. It is vibration of pure existence, instinct with the perceptive and originative power of infinite and omnipotent consciousness, shaped by the mind behind mind into the inevitable word of the truth of things. Out of whatever substance on whatever plane, the form or physical expression emerges by its creative agency. The supermind, using the word, is the creative logos. So this paragraph summarizes the whole thing in relation to the text of the Kena. We have seen already in our previous discussions when the Kena speaks of mind of the mind. It describes this consciousness above the mind, which itself forms the mind and its processes, but it's free of the mind's limitations. It has its own cognition and knowledge, which is different from the mind's limited form of knowledge. And that is the supramental knowledge behind the mental knowledge. But in the same way, when the Kena Upanishad speaks of speech of our speech, it is on that level of the supermind's creative word, of which our physical speech and physical vibration is a representation. And now he maps mind of our mind, speech of our speech, with mind and speech on our level. He does this horizontal mapping. So there, the mind of our mind uses speech of our speech to initiate the vibration, which here in the human experience, our mind and our speech replicates. Also in a miniature microcosmos. So this then, at the supramental level, is the supreme word, speech of our speech. And what is its nature? It is vibration of pure existence. We come back to a discussion we had earlier also, but especially on the last Friday, when we were discussing this, the Sat Chit Ananda as the existence which is consciousness, which is bliss, from which the whole movement of manifestation begins. That supreme word is a vibration of the pure existence of the Sat, of the Satchidananda, instinct with the perceptive and originative power of infinite and omnipotent consciousness, the Chit of the Satchidananda. And of course that vibration itself is its play of delight. But here the highlight is on the power of the consciousness. The consciousness itself being infinite, itself being utterly free, It can vibrate and form out of itself whatever it chooses without opposition, without resistance, and therefore it is also omnipotent. So the power of infinite and omnipotent consciousness is instinct in this vibration of pure existence. So when the pure existence vibrates, it has this power of consciousness which is infinite, omnipotent, and whatever it chooses to manifest flows freely because there's nothing to oppose, all is itself. And as that moves to create the mind of our mind, which is the supermind, which is the creative station of the Satchidananda, when Satchidananda conceives of the manifestation and sees all the infinite possibilities and arranges them in a right relation, that is the mind of our mind, the supermind, which sees everything in perfect relation, perfect alignment, and then moves to manifest. So, shaped by the mind behind the mind, into the inevitable word of the truth of things. Because all this right now is freely chosen vision and form of itself. All exists by itself, not in relativity, not in dependence of other things. All is pure truth. And when that pure truth thus moves into vibration to manifest, that is the word of our word, the inevitable word of the truth of things. Inevitable because it could not be otherwise, because it is the pure vibrational expression of that which is already self-existent. You will find the same phrase Sri Aurobindo uses in Savitri when he is describing the Divine Mother in her station as the creator of the cosmos. When he says, she is the force, the inevitable word. And you understand the sense of inevitability here. So eventually, when we see this as the origin of things, even if you look at any intermediate level, out of whatever substance on whatever plane, the form or physical expression emerges by its creative activity. Because there is supermind behind creating word of our word, therefore on all the other planes, even down to the most material, those processes are possible because they are already initiated there. The supermind using the word is the creative logos. A logos is a specific term used in the Western philosophical context. It is the creative power which orders, arranges and governs and develops the whole universe. It is the idea of something which holds, orders and unfolds in an order which makes it cosmos and not chaos. The same things which exist in the universe, if they were in chaos without relationship to each other, haphazard, random, meaningless, would be chaos. But what arranges and makes it this perfect universe is that power, the creative logos. And it is this supermind using the word. We recall now again with a deeper understanding the same biblical phrasing of this truth when it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so this is the idea of the creative logos. Now when it actually moves to manifest, there are obviously certain rhythms, certain patterns, certain forms which are more essential, more common, out of which specializations would come. Obviously, those would have a special place in the movement of the manifestation, and those are captured in the science of mantra because precisely of this utility. They are still the pranava, but where the pranava has already moved into domain of form, but capturing form at an essential level, the same way as the words we speak are governed behind or organized by a thought. The thought itself could be expressed in many different combinations of words or sounds. If I speak the same idea in one language and speak it in another language, the word vibration is completely different, though the thought is common. But you could take a whole group of thoughts and hold them in a common umbrella of an idea, or a group of ideas in a common umbrella of a concept. And all this is still in the mental plane. And so we can say corresponding to each of these would be corresponding vibrations. Already a vibration at a specific thought level would be very specific and narrow. But move to the idea level, it would have a vibrational quality which could take many different specializations of thought. Move to a pure concept level, and it could be something even more essential. And perhaps we may say at a conceptual level, there are only so many broad concepts, all others being specializations or variations of them. And if we could master those, then everything else would be very easy to operate on. The moment we catch this idea, you understand the truth of the idea in the mantra yoga of seed sounds, bija mantras. They are as if seeds from which a whole tree can grow. But in themselves, the seeds are extremely small. So a whole mantra elaborating and unfolding a very specific meaning or outcome can be held in a single seed sound, or a whole variety of mantras in a single seed sound. And so in the science of mantras, the seed sounds were used with great effect. And by combining seed sounds, you could create very complex and specific outcomes. By mastering seed sounds, you could govern or influence a whole range of powerful outcomes. So Sri Aurobindo now moves the attention to this level of the creative word. We have seen at the highest level, it is something which is almost indescribable as it moves from formlessness to form, and it is only the pranava, the om. But once now it moves further down into domain of form, this happens. The word has its seed sounds, suggesting the eternal syllable of the Veda, a, u, ma, and the seed sounds of the tantrics, which carry in them the principles of things. It has its forms which stand behind the revelatory and inspired speech that comes to man's supreme faculties. And these compel the forms of things in the universe. It has its rhythms, for it is no disordered vibration, but moves out into great cosmic measures. And according to the rhythm is the law, arrangement, harmony, processes of the worlds it builds. Life itself is a rhythm of God. So all this to describe still the word. The word has its seed sounds. It has its forms which stand behind the revelatory and inspired speech. And it has its rhythms. Seed sounds, forms, rhythms. And so we briefly elaborate on each of these. First, the seed sounds. So when Sri Aurobindo refers to the seed sounds, he says, suggesting the eternal syllable of the Veda, a, u, ma, and the seed sounds of the tantrics, all of which carry in them the principles of things. And so this principles of things is the thing behind which operates across all the possible forms. What we would mean, for example, at the material level, there is the principle of action and reaction. Now, of that principle itself, there may be very specific forms. The principle can be demonstrated on everything, all particles, all atoms, all stones, all human beings, all planets, all galaxies. But the principle is something, because it is at a level of a principle, not bound to a form, it is also universal and also eternal. And so these seed sounds, the uma and the seed sounds of the tantrics, carry in them the principles of things. Now Sri Aurobindo had done extensive work on this particular aspect in his writings on the origin of language, and in the text which is available to us already printed, we get a sense that he was trying to put in form the whole science of how language developed and how it acts. And linking it, of course, across, he lists, I think, 6 languages, where he would show comparatively how the root sounds of each language have certain common principles. And what is seen in his whole description of the origin of language is not as modern linguistics understands, that one word changes into another and changes into another and so on, but behind groups of words are common essential root sounds and root concepts. Behind them again, still more essential root sounds. And therefore, when languages develop across the world, and one could even say, because it is at the level of principles, across the universe, when language develops, it would tend to follow these certain patterns of the meaning unfolding. At its most external level, we have this combination of words joining. Automobile. We have a new object created which did not exist before. To describe it, we have to join 2 words. It moves by itself, so automobile, which later becomes shortened to auto in a very specific context. But these are all much later variations and processes of linguistic formation. But behind that, why auto, why mobile has those meanings? What does the word educate mean, for example? And if you go back to the root, it comes to ex ducere. Ex is drawing, it's outside. Ducere is leading, leading outward, drawing out. So educate has behind it the idea of drawing out from within. And when you have the idea of somebody educating someone, he is leading, drawing out. Or when somebody is educating himself, he is drawing out from within, leading out what is already within him latent. And you can take any word in any language, go back in its etymology, and you'll come to certain root sounds or combinations of sounds and root concepts. And when you look at ex ducere, outward, lead. Or there are other words which mean blocking, removing block. So if you consider in this way, the whole of human experience can be reduced to certain fundamental movements, actions, or relationships. And the seed sounds capture them at that level. From there now, any word is a combination of such things. When Sri Aurobindo does the analysis of certain words in Sanskrit, he takes in the text which I referred to last time, which is called the first rik of the Rig Veda, he says, he shows you the etymology of various words. From the first rik of the Rig Veda, Agnim ire purohitam, Agni we adore, and then the word purohitam. If you ask anybody in Sanskrit today, what is purohitam? They will say priest. Fine, that's the way it is used now. But what does the word mean? And Sri Aurobindo goes to the etymology. Pura and hita. So, pura, you will see the word now across languages. In English, it becomes bara, Edin bara, or baro, comes from pura. In Sanskrit, pura is also city. So what is city got to do with priest? But actually the word city is also a mentalized use of the word pura. The essential sense of pura at that principal level is in front. So pura, also you see the resonance of the word with purva, before, original, initiating, originating. So something before, in front, and so a wall in front, isolating the city, defined the city. So something coming in front as a barrier, cutting out, becomes the definer of a city. So a bara is also a cutout region of governance, of administration. So pura is before. Hita, the words, again the root is from who, forcefully planting, establishing. So purohitam, who stands in front, but forcefully, with authority, with strength, because that is his right, his place, his true relationship. So Agni we adore, Agnim Ire, Purohitam, the one who stands in front of who? Yajna. Yajna is the Supreme Lord, the Divine Himself. I see the whole sentence could be understood on so many levels, depending on what level you recognize the word to mean. At its highest and deepest level, it is Agni we adore, who stands before the Lord. But why does he stand before the Lord? And Sri Aurobindo has a whole description of what Agni represents and how his natural place is before the Lord. Again, in us, on a psychological level, the whole thing can be understood in so many different ways. Agni stands before the Lord because he is the child of the tapas of the Lord, the energy, the creative power who gives form to things. And so he stands before the Lord. On the other hand, Agni also within us represents the fire of our aspiration. It is he who stands before the Lord. He mediates between us and the Lord. He leads us to the Lord. He sees the Lord. He knows the Lord. And so the same thing can be seen in many different ways. But if you stand back from all these, you already sense intuitively there is a deeper sense, a meaning of which these are mental formulations. The mind externalizing on objectifying Agni puts him in front of the Lord in this way. But the consciousness internalizing and subjectifying Agni puts him as the leader of our march, as the aspiration emerging from our heart. But you could see the whole thing also in a very transcending from all these personal differences, personal viewpoints, see the whole universe. And Agni is the creative power working in matter who draws out matter from the unmanifest, from the emptiness of space and gives form to matter. And the whole movement is moving towards the Lord. He sees where the whole journey of evolution has to go. He works in the darkness and leads the formation and the development of evolution in the whole universe. And Agni is seen in its deepest function in the universe as the divine will, immanent. And now when you look at the whole universe in this way, Agni is that spark of light, the psychic spark in all things, which makes those things possible to be, and which from the heart of things goads them to move forward, to evolve, to unfold their potential, leading them towards their highest possibility, towards the Lord. And when we say, Agni we adore, we love, who stands before the Lord, Purohitam, suddenly all these meanings can be held in a single vision experience. But the moment you allow the mind to step in, it quickly reduces to this or that or the other, as if leaning, exaggerating, highlighting what is for you at that moment, the natural vision experience. But the verse itself captures something much more broad. And so you see how when language is a natural representation of the vibrational quality from the root sounds emerging, it can capture in a single formulation essential truths represented or held in an essential way, which the mind can now reduce, translate, understand in many different ways according to its capacity or inclination or need of that moment, all the way down to the most material. And this is why these are called seed sounds, and they carry in them the principles of things. So even at a pure conceptual level, if you formulate something at the level of the principles of things, you can see how it can be now expressed in so many different forms of ideas, so many different variations of thoughts, and so many verbalizations of those same thoughts. And this is Sri Aurobindo's description of how language originates. When first language emerges, it comes down in this way because of its vibrational quality and takes on material at different levels, becoming more and more specific and narrow in meaning. The text which is there in an article which is only partially published, the rest seems to be lost or belongs to 2 more volumes which are not yet published of Sri Aurobindo's linguistic work. The last para of this, as it is published, describes this process of development of language coming down. I'll just read it out quickly. We don't have time today to dwell upon it. He says, I shall first indicate the principle on which the roots of the Deva Bhasha, the divine language, were formed. All Shabda, meaning vibration, Vak, as it manifests out of the Akasha, the ether, by the force of Matareshwan, the creative waters, the great active and creative energy, and is put in its place in the flux of formed things, apas, carries with it certain definite significances, artha. These are determined by the elements through which it has passed. Shabda, sound, appears in the Akasha, ether, travels through Vayu, the air principle, the second element, in which Sparsha, touch, is the vibration. By the vibrations of Sparsha, touch, it creates in Tejas, fire, the third element, certain forms, and so arrives into being with these 3 characteristics. First, certain contactual vibrations. Secondly, a particular kind of Tejas or force. Thirdly, a particular form. The sentence is long and complex, but basically it's saying all sound vibration, that is of the creative original Vak, as it moves down the 5 elements, through the ether where it originates as vibration, through the Vayu principle of air, through the fire principle, it picks up these things on each level. 3 characteristics: contactual vibration, touch, force, and particular form. These determine the bhava or general sensation it creates in the mind. And from that sensation develops its various precise meanings according to the form which it is used to create. This is so brilliant, so profound, and it is describing all these levels of how the language unfolds, develops, concretizes, but also describes how we can articulate things on each of those vibrational levels and how they become more specific, more formed. There are entire charts of root sounds that Sri Aurobindo made. I had heard long ago, 40 notebooks. Each sound, its root sound, variations, and the words from which are derived from this, he has written down to justify this whole thing, showing what are the characteristics of each of these sounds. I just take one R sound as a root: to move, rich, to shine, to praise, ridge, to be firm and strong, raj, to make straight or right, rah, to grow, to succeed, etc. And others where it is not initial and also in its long forms. Similarly, ka, kra, to make, arrange, to do, to split into parts and put in order, krit, to cut, gr, to call, recite, swallow. So in this way, he has captured in their essence all these bhava, force, form, and the vibrational, contactual character of each of these sounds. And you can see how behind every word these things exist. And that's how we pick a certain sound to express a certain emotion or feeling or sensation, and thereafter to construct more complex thoughts and ideas with sound. So I won't go further into this. Perhaps we will touch on a few of the seed sounds next time and see also how they are arranged in the tantric scheme of things, because Sri Aurobindo has taken the trouble to mention them. It's worth dwelling upon that. But we see how this originating creative vibration, the word, has its seed sounds, It has its forms which stand behind, it has its rhythms, and all these combine to manifest, to create the universe. And in the totality, when we see the big picture from that creative manifesting word, life itself is a rhythm of God. And so, what is expressed by the word when the divine thus moves to manifest is the theme also of the next paragraph, which we will take up next Sunday.